I'm right at the edge of the pond out back here, and it's been a good year for wild grapes. These set of vines back here along the edge of the pond are just loaded with grapes. So I'm going to pick some and give them a try. This is what I got in about 20-25 minutes, and I had about half again as many grapes. I gave those away to the neighbor. And this is all, I basically just stood in one spot, so this is all within the reach of just a standing position. So I'll go ahead and use this nylon bag, straining bag, for my wild grapes in there. I'll probably just go ahead and crush them in there. Ooh, getting a lot of juice out of there. So anyways, that's the goal, is to get a bunch of juice out of this. It's a pretty stiff nylon bag. This nylon straining bag was $4.25. They have different capacities. This is really clearly the way to go, unless you're going to make large quantities of wine. This is kind of, I'll work this back and forth with my hand, but probably a couple cups worth of concentrate there in my wine here. But yeah, this is just superb. Really like the straining bag. It's well worth the $4. And wow, pretty. So, since this is clearly an experiment, I'd like to measure everything so I can tweak it next time up or down for how much concentrate I want. So I'm going to pour my concentrate in there. And it's almost 2 cups, just shy. If I roll this some more, I'm sure I can get another. Some more juice out of here. Twisting motion really kind of brings out a lot of extra juice. My yeast can handle up to 15% alcohol. So I'll just add the sugar, which is converted to alcohol, and you can see my hydrometer here will rise as I add sugar, and it dissolves. And there's markings on it, and it should tell me how much sugar to add for 15% alcohol. So the hydrometer should be floating at that level. And over the course of weeks, as sugar is converted to alcohol, the specific gravity of this will decrease, so the hydrometer will sink as the alcohol increases and the sugar decreases. So I'll go ahead and keep adding sugar. And you can see that keeps coming out of the water as I add more sugar. So I'm going for 15% here alcohol. The yeast can handle that. My hydrometer reads at 13%. So as the sugar is converted to alcohol by the yeast, this hydrometer over the course of weeks should slowly sink, and when it gets to about that height, it should have converted most of the sugar into alcohol. adding more sugar really isn't going to increase the alcohol, because the alcohol is a toxic waste product of the yeast, and they only can live in so much of their own waste. So 15% is what this yeast can tolerate for alcohol. If I add more sugar, it'll just be a sweeter wine. It won't, the alcohol content won't go past 15%. So the idea is to next add the yeast. They recommend you start a culture and 10% of the volume of whatever you're going to ferment. And the idea is, otherwise the yeast, it's kind of a solid, and if you just add it, it'll just sink to the bottom. And you want it to get a running start, because you don't want other bacteria to dominate the growth inside the container. So, but I'm going to just go ahead and pretend like I've started this 10 hours ago, and I'll just add a little bit, and then in a few weeks I should have something that resembles wine. That's what I'm hoping. In the fermentation, carbon dioxide is released. That's a byproduct along with the alcohol of the fermentation of the sugar. And you don't want to add oxygen in the container, because that actually will help different types of microbes grow, and not the yeast. And you just want the yeast growing in there. So as the carbon dioxide comes off, it'll bubble through here, and then it'll just keep gassing out. But the idea is you don't want the backflow of oxygen or atmosphere into the bottle, because then you'll encourage different types of bacteria to grow, some which might be really bad for your health if you ingest them. I started this container of Wild Grape Wine on September the 15th with Aspenhausen yeast. It took about 3 days for the yeast to really start rolling, and I took 2 cups of this from this container, transferred it into this container, which I started September 19th, so there's 4 days between the 2 containers. And because the yeast is already activated, I wanted to give the yeast a running start in this container. So this container and this container have Aspenhausen yeast. And then this is my attempt at apple wine. I used some Macintosh apples, and I cut them up, put them in a food blender. Pretty hard on the food blender, but get a little more juice for the number of apples. And this, I took some juice out of here and transferred it in here, because again the yeast is already activated and rolling pretty good. So, and this was started about 3 days ago. So everything's fizzing away like crazy. I started this apple wine just a couple days ago, and I used the juice from the Wild Grape Wine because the yeast was already active and going pretty good. So I just put some in there to get the yeast running start at it, and make sure I got a dominant strain of yeast in there. And that should be the Aspenhausen yeast strain. So, and this thing is the apple wine. The yeast apparently like the lower acid conditions, because it seems to be outpacing the Wild Grape Wine by quite a bit. And I'm just gauging that on the CO2 released through the airlock. So, and this is the airlock for the grape wine I just started a couple days ago on September 19th. I'm going to have to check that wine, add some nutrients. It's a little bit on the slow side. And then this is the airlock for the Wild Grape Wine I started on September the 15th. It's going pretty good. So, and if you look, there's just a gazillion bubbles coming off of it, so, which is good news. These airlocks are made out of glass. My brother bought these about 40 years ago, but the equivalent glass ones nowadays are about $8 each. And modern times, you can buy plastic airlocks for $1 a piece, which is what I did just to supplement my arsenal. And then I bought some more, and these are a different style of airlock, but also $1 a piece. So I don't see really a need for glass. It breaks. I mean, if the plastic gets scuzzed up, you throw it out. I use 69-cent distilled water containers, 1 gallon capacity, for my fermentation jugs, and the plastic on these containers should be food grade. And also I use the distilled water inside there to dilute my grape and apple juice concentrate. So for 69 cents I get some sterile water to use with the and then also a nice sterile container. So that's not too expensive. And it saves the hassle of cleaning up some old glass containers. So I was at a recent party where they were serving wine, and I grabbed these wine bottles, salvaged them from the recycling bin. And the wine shops, they want almost $3 a bottle, and that's for smaller bulk. But so this little box represents about well over $20 in bottles. So I don't really care about what the bottles look like. So, but save a little money and grab used bottles. For juices such as apple juice with a lot of pectin, they recommend a pectin enzyme, and you'd actually treat the juice before you actually start your yeast culture in it, and that's to help clarify the solution. Apparently, the pectin will cause a cloudiness after the fermentation process is over, and that's hard to remove after the fact. So you basically, before you start your yeast, you really are to use this. But I didn't use it in this first batch of apple wine I made, and so we'll see how cloudy it becomes, or if it's even an issue. And there's plenty of clarifying agents for wines. One of them is bentonite earth, which is basically stirred in, and it forms a layer that just slowly over the course of days sinks and drags all the different floating yeast and other stuff floating in there down to the bottom. This amylase enzyme is actually another clarifying agent. It helps break down the starches, and you can do this. This is more of a after the wine is done fermenting, so there's no worry about adding it beforehand. So, and if your wine looks cloudy and it's because of starch, then you can use this to clear it up. I did buy some yeast nutrient. Essentially it's urea, or in layman's terms that would be urine. It basically just has the water removed, and I'm sure it's done under sterile conditions. You don't absolutely need a hydrometer, but I recommend one. You can just add 3 or 4 cups of sugar to your gallon solution of wine juice or apple juice, grape juice, whatever. But this will give you a better control over the final product if you use that. So I recommend it. Some corks, I got several different sizes, but these are about $1.25 a piece, so not cheap. And then I bought some just regular litmus paper and it's good to know how acidic your wine solution is. Just you want to keep the yeast healthy, and they like a certain pH, so you want to maintain that.